be out. We'll start off with the Chargers and the Jags game, which actually it's ironic, right? Because that was kind of a pick 'em. Now all of a sudden we've seen it at 2.5. Now all of a sudden it's at 2. My X factor in this, and you tell me where you're at with this one. I look the head coaching and I look at the experience. And as much as I love what the Chargers are doing, they're one of my Super Bowl picks, by the way, against Minnesota.
Right.
We'll talk a little more about that. You just got to love what Lawrence is doing. He's been on a roll. Jacksonville's on a roll. But I give the edge to Doug in this situation. He's been there before. So what's your thoughts on this one?
Obviously, Doug is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. We all know Nick Foles and that Super Bowl against the Patriots, Philly special. But my big thing, the X factor for me is Austin Eckler of the LA Chargers, because we've seen the Jaguars struggle against the run. You look at what Derrick Henry did, even though it was a loss last week, but prior to that loss, his last 3 games against the Chargers, he was rushing well over 100 yards. I think if they could pound the ball hard with Austin Eckler, who's a multifaceted player that keeps the ball out of Trevor Lawrence's hands, that keeps the ball out of Travis Etienne's hands, and all those weapons on offense, it runs down the defense. So I think that the Chargers have to actually rely more on Austin Eckler than on Justin Herbert doing everything with his arm. We don't know if Mike Williams is going to play, even though I suspect that DeAndre Carter and Joshua Palmer are more than capable of filling in. But my X factor for this game is Austin Eckler. If he could run the ball, if the Chargers can control time of possession, then they will have the win.
And remember, too, Jacksonville right now, 5 straight wins. Obviously, the Chargers 4 or 5. You mentioned a little banged up. When they met earlier in the season, Jacksonville returned a fumble for a touchdown. They routed them 38-10. They jumped out to that lead. They were able to run the ball for about $150. Now, part of that was having James Robinson. He's no longer with them. He's with the Jets. I'm looking at the total 47, juice to the over a little bit, 47.5. I think it might close right around 48, perhaps. Do you like playing the over on this one? I mean, respectively, Chargers are averaging about 24, Jacksonville about 23 points a game.
Surprisingly, I like the under on this one. It's a short week for the Chargers. They played Sunday. It's still a long week. It's still a regular rested week for the Jaguars, but I'm really leaning under on this. And I'll tell you why. A lot of these players on both these teams, this is their first time tasting postseason action. They're grown men, they're athletes, but they're still jitters. I think they come out a little shaky. If you want the best bet, I think is the first half under. I think that by the second half, they'll have their nerves calm. They'll come out. You'll see some scoring. Overall in the game, I like the under, but I think if you're going to lean one way or the other, take the first half under.
By the way, when we put it down in the green marker on BYP Back Your Play, that means it's in. You can't change it. How about some player props? You mentioned Eckler. I mean, do you see anything there yet that you might like?
I like the over in his rushing total. Also his receptions. I think that they're going to use a lot of screen passes a lot. I don't see them, especially if Mike Williams is out. I don't think the deep ball is going to be as big of a threat. You still have Keenan Allen. You have the other 2 receivers, but I think that you're going to see a heavy dose of Austin Eckler. So he's my big player prop. I think if you look at Jacksonville's side, I would actually go under Trevor Lawrence's passing yards. I think that in this game, listen, we saw him struggle in the biggest game of his career last week against the Titans. The Titans only lost that game because the Jaguars defense won that game for them. Lawrence did not look good at all. He overthrew a lot of his guys. I don't know how he's going to react to the postseason. If you remember in that national championship game, Clemson against Joe Burrow and LSU, he really faltered in that. I don't know what we're going to see Trevor Lawrence in his first postseason game, so I'm going to lead the under on his passing yards.
That's a good point. I mean, I'm leaning towards Jacksonville at home, and I feel foolish again because I have the Chargers as representing the AFC. I mean, name of the show is Back Your Play. I got to back it. I think I don't like to hedge either. I want to see where this line's at, closing value late on Saturday, but the Chargers are so inconsistent. They're such an enigma.
Right.
And even if they win this game, that coach is still in the hot seat. That's what's crazy about it, right?
But I thought he should have been fired last week after he played all his starters well into the third quarter.